Has everyone received the 1AC?
Yes. Thank you for sending it out on time. Love to see it.
Okay, then 8 minutes starting. Now, contention with the Hopi in the status quo, then it's for the USFT does not have a duty to provide safe water on the Hope reservations. Federal Circuit Code of 15. Hope shall budget USFT to eradicate water quality in the reservation winter suburb does not give US responsibility. Supreme Court decisions are controlling. Then, without a legal duty, the federal government will not provide clean water. Like 21. Chamber 5 million, only 25% of construction costs and provides operation and maintenance. Hope examines limits the government's current approach, can introduce more complicated applications, and never taking running costs. Since despite direct federal control, Chapter 14, all the U.S. pledge is far greater than general trust. U.S. involved in every aspect of Hopi's access to water, reserving the homeland, representing Hopi for within 3 decades in water disputes, operating largest water system in Hopi lands, locating, signing, and funding, installing, and owning groundwater wells, a community affected by arsenic, determining operating federal facilities on a reservation, prescribing standards for determining whether water may be safe. This directly impacts the quality of life and will only get worse. Take 21. The U.S. government's haphazard approach to clean water must be radically transformed. Indigenous Americans lack safe water, without which health conditions including COVID-19, diabetes, and gastrointestinal disease are more likely. Reduced rainfall and droughts linked to the climate crisis are further straining supply issues with inadequate infrastructure, contaminants, insufficient capacity, and limited revenue. 75% of residents of Hopi reservation are forced to take one list arsenic. 7,000 Hopi are impacted April 18. The Navajo workforce supports the needs of more than 7,000 Hopi, but Rockford testing revealed that arsenic levels more than double the limit in studies have revealed that water levels decline, the concentration gets higher. The Hopi are non-marked. Also, like infrastructure to remove arsenic or from other sources. Arsenic poisoning correlates to higher mortality rates. Pathogens for certain types of cancer among native are more than double white. It violates respect from the standpoint of the Hopi, otherwise you devalue indigenous suffering. Maka and Flores 09. Indigenous peoples are adversely affected by government policy because top-down policy-making approaches costs over their restrictive ways of life. The consequences of a we know us past few policy mentality are all too often perpetuating the current status quo. The historical inequities that led to genocides enslavement and carnation, assimilation, denial of humanity. These injustices are so deeply embedded in modern society that their effects continue to systemically churn their lives. A colonial status quo is likely to persist with an inclusive policy paradigm that mainstreams indigenizing policy-making infused with dominant value, Eurocentric and institutionalized biases and vested interests. Even evidence-based policy-making improve biasing. White policy-makers need to become vigilant to how their whiteness shapes their reputation. What gets counted as evidence when considering indigenous health policy. Then the Hopi care about water quality. More than 19 native populations experience chronic disparities and health outcomes associated with environmental hazards. We can focus on Hopi reservation. 41 after effect, we identify arsenic in drinking water as significant exposures of concern. Then the plan, the Supreme Court of the United States, showed that water arsenic levels in the United States, in the Hopi reservation, violates the United States obligation under winters. Then Solvency, can she do solvency first Supreme Court Quarantine. Water rights are not explicitly mentioned in treaties. Consequently, recovery from water rights violations is extremely difficult for tribes. Hopefully, the Supreme Court will and the court and troublesome district. Then winters is the right rationale. Hope 14. Hope has a complaint alleged to us not method like she gave us to drink water under winters. Hope is right to water. Child salvation worked 2019 for 50 years after the tribal trust has been viewed more positive by tribes. By virtue of trust, U.S. has an obligation to provide tribes with housing, education, and other services. Access to safe water is vital to fulfillment of the aforementioned trust obligations. Thus ensuring that restrictions that sufficient quantities of safe water should fall within the federal government's relationship with Indian tribes. Trust is legally enforceable. Then Hopi framing, Section 3's framing, critiques links and counterpoints falsity claims, essentialized indigenous beliefs, and directly cause colonial violence. Priorities of 6. The fluid nature of any indigenous identity over time and place is not particular to indigenous context. There are innumerable types of identity that vary from, including race, gender, sexuality, age, class, physicality. All these are complex, multifaceted historical constructs. Indigenous constructions involve boundary policing, which construct indigenous and non-indigenous identities as mutually impermeable. Such policing serves to alienate past and future indigenous people indigeneity into a prison house of identity, which may isolate them from contemporary life. The powerful troops interpret every indigenous person through stereotype images that coalesce around fantasies of exclusivity, alterity, marginality. Indigenous peoples are often required to publicly confess to recklessness and a manifestation of the colonial gaze. When group cohesion is premised on the impossibility of transcending such subordination, individual success endangers this cohesion. Social norms keep members in place. Emphasis on marginality risks reinforcing fatalism, which pervades minds of many who, faced with the myth of worsening indigenous disadvantage, believe there is no solution and hence no point trying. A troubling aspect is positioning indigenes as epistemologically superior, although driven by non-indigenous attempts to mitigate privileged position and associate the guilt of continuing colonization. Such is more often perpetrated against by indigenous people's idea leads to uncritical acceptance, scholarship untenable given the various and contradictory views indigenous people hold. This leads many to conclude repugnant acts such as racism cannot be perpetrated by indigenous people. Authenticity linguistics 13. Authenticity stems from essentialist beliefs, and there are innate social categories which succeed from social construct of the culture. Many are set a few centuries back. These images are in fact not representative of Native Americans. The Hopi tribe exemplifies Western interests without attempting to truly understand. According to essentialism, there are essentially inherent or true cultures. Authenticity works as an act of literal discursive violence, as it does not allow the natives to define themselves and mute them on a symbolic level. Authenticity lies in the political discourses of the U.S. Native Americans are not able to define themselves. The U.S. has defined them. Indigenous pedagogy by 2004 frameworks of critical theory provide indigenous scholars a way to think about self-determination. No theory can or should be everything to all. People's difference is in the material domain necessitates difference in discursive fields. While evolutionary critical theory may serve as a vital tool, basis of red pedagogy remains distinctive, rooted in indigenous praxis. Red pedagogy does not aim to reproduce an essentialist view of tradition. The alternative to tradition is speculative. Tradition is not simply uniform, unchanging beliefs, but rather commitment to future sustainability of the group. The struggle for freedom is not about dressing up in the trappings of the past and making demands, but about being firmly rooted in the ever-changing experiences of the community. Red pedagogy is ongoing and self-reflective, a never-ending project continually informed by changing realities. That is not to say progress cannot be measured. Degree to which indigenous peoples are able to define and exercise political sovereignty is an accurate measure of the colonialist relations. Navajo are in conflict with the Hopi. Du Bois 15. First time the Hopi and the U.S. government forming was in 1855 to constant invasion of traditional Hopi land. The Hopi U.S. government could lawfully restrict Navajo encroachment while successfully kept white settlers out. Reservation did not successfully stop invasion by Navajo after losing nearly half their land in 1974, the Navajo Hopi Settlement Act. Unfortunately, many Navajo ignored rules. Contention 3-4 is framing. Survivor framing makes ethical fishing possible. County 73 in the name of survival. Always been during World War II. Japanese Americans have been hurt to death camps. Others have been going on his banners. The government has opposed the route overridden. Even the Jamaicans survival to suppress the fundamental right to the potential tyrannies. Survival capable of wiping out lives. Its prices of human survival, human recognition. There is no moral reason for effort to maintain survival or represent victories and opposite victories. Ben, thinking is wrong and recreates his own by sign of the man. People keep talking about their adversaries. Smashing the worst possible outcome that acting as certainty, so to imagine if it's seeking speculative for risk analysis and fear reason. If I was proud of building life with such a process, what city means generate streaming, it's only half the cost of mitigation. What seeking focuses on the extreme body problems and the future by assisting outcomes on the fallout to get a team promoted as that never is possible. It can be used for any position top. Those things that are more justified. What's thinking about this? You can see the dangerous and hasty acts that time. Does the opponent want more copy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or actually, can you just tell us which cards you skipped?
Yeah, just the last card I didn't read, and then the one before that I marked at acts. Hasty and dangerous acts.
Okay. Okay. You good?
Yeah.
Right. I guess what does the Supreme Court ruling solve?
Yeah, so basically they created a right for the Hopi under on new grounds that the Hopi deserve right to clean water by the federal government, and this for basically makes the EPA.
Why did the sorry? Why do the Hopi currently not have access to clean water?
Because our water is laced with arsenic, and under the previous case they don't have right to clean water, but we're changing that on new grounds.
So the Supreme Court rules that water arsenic levels violate this trust obligation.
Yes,
and that results in like them getting new lands. How does that happen?
Not new land. 15 million additional funding. Basically, we're arguing that on the case to help you that to provide facilities of education, healthcare, you need clean water. So yeah.
Oh, which card is that?
That's the 1 sec. I think that's the Propel 19 card. Talks about trust obligation works, about like how by virtue trust, U.S. has an obligation to provide tribes with housing, education, healthcare, and other services. Access to safe water is vital to the fulfillment of the aforementioned
I guess like the framing stuff. Like, should we just like prioritize like natives over everybody else?
We should prioritize their, like in this particular case, we should prioritize their viewpoint and their standpoint on their issues, and we should reject extinction level impacts because they're low probability, etc. And
So
they
if we win probability for an extinction level impact, do we win that impact outweighs?
no. We also think that survival framing leads to a race to the bottom, and it just justifies racism. And then
Which card is that?
that's the China 10 talks about how it's wrong, and then Callan 73 is about how it's racist.
Okay. Do you have any questions?
Can you explain for Schneider 10 how worst case thinking recreates its own impacts?
Yeah, because basically so like basically when you are like under this mindset that it's gonna happen regardless of what you do, like it's a really big impact. Like you like lose like your ability to like solve for it, and it fosters paralysis and like vulnerability. And then talk about how it can since it's like so versatile, it can be used to support this position or that position. Like nuclear war can happen on the app side or the next side, and that's bad because it needs to be like concrete.
Partner sending out the doc.
Okay. What's the order gonna look like?
He'll get that.
Yeah, give me a sec. Can you turn your volume down?
I think you sent something, but there is no doc attached, so.
Oh shoot, sorry. Yeah, I'll attach the proper doc. All right, there, I just sent the real doc. We're just gonna be 7. Yeah, 7 off, then framing, and then the advantage or advantage 1 or the Hopi advantage, right? I guess you would put it under solvency, actually. Yeah, solvency. Sorry. Is everyone ready? All right. Okay. First off, TUSFG, the United States federal government water protection establishes management and standards and requirements on U.S. public lands. This is distinct from regulation of native lives because U.S. federal government does not have jurisdiction over these lands. Energy Law Journal 22. The Congress lacks authority to regulate on Indian lands for restrictive management standards and requirements. The Congress does not intend to allow Indian lands relying on regulatory regime on Indian lands contrary that it should accept the federal government policy of self-determination of Indian tribes support tribal determination Indian land policy, not federal imposition of public land policy on Indian lands. The EPA establishes energy management goals in such areas of water conservation. Nothing in this act confers jurisdiction over Indian lands. Violation: the affirmative engages in water protection outside of public lands to devolves authority. 2. Ethics topical: they have to expand the EPA jurisdiction to encompass tribal lands. It's an independent vote because anything could affect water protection, exploding the topic to infinite possibilities and making it impossible to be negative. Next up, the CONCON-CP. States call a limited constitutional convention. The states ratify an amendment that establishes the water arsenic levels in the Hopi Reservation violates the United States trust obligation. Solves and avoids L being 18. Concurrent Article 5 allows a bypass Congress authority for states of Indiana, limited specific issues, changes they need to be ratified by the states. And next up, Congress CP. The United States Congress should enact a law that water arsenic levels in the Hopi Reservation are illegal. Only Congress has authority to implement the plan. Douglas 18. These are to be prohibited if the Congress organized tribal jurisdiction. Only Congress can assign a tribal authority pertains to United States versus Wheeler. If Congress passes legislating recognized tribal jurisdiction, tribal authority will be based less time. Next up. The planetary powers DA. Only Congress has plenary power to regulate tribes in the court's jurisdiction. Douglas 18. Marshall had that as a people who maintain jurisdiction of a tribe that they were neither a state nor a nation. They worked with Marshall emphasized the Cherokee Nation within the community with sovereignty and relationships. This act of the Constitution provided power to the regulation internal Indian affairs. Encouragement was affirmed by the plenary congressional power. The Supreme Court found that the president of any tribe within U.S. boundaries gave Congress plenary power authority to legislate criminal code. And the plan caused a constitutional crisis by expanding current power over tribes, which goes back on congressional plenary powers. Equal 10. The court's legislative function has numbered justice for textual authority. There's president, the Congress has authority over quite an Indian law. As Congress quite a continued crisis of constitutional dimension lose. Congress has suspended to limit Congress to check on the power of the court cannot come soon enough. And plenary power solves external crisis, isolationism, failed states, and transnational terror. Field 17. Two justifications for adherence to the difference for the keeping of plenary power. The doctrine category gives assurance that Congress will preserve foreign affairs imperative. Second, our world will be marked by cooperation and isolation, distrust, transnational terrorism. Attacks revealed a need for screening nations that are facing global threats, insurgency, proliferated climate change, disease risks, possibly have immigration dimension, geopolitical reality. No way it justifies disregarding the Constitution. Foreign aggressive cyber capabilities, the judiciary, and a capable winning security objective. And attacks are likely in spurs global escalation. Article PUS 18. There's a list of plenty of obtained of material boundaries, corruption, weakness, judicial system, give rise to transaction, nuclear attack, small fission bomb, president, catastrophic scenario, total destruction with propagate worldwide security, would all be governance would all be put under travel. Global distress, spike tensions among the public that lead to nuclear use by states, escalation, conflict, military unilateralism. Next up, the sua sponte DA. Courts apps must include the taxation in the plan text. That creates better debate through research and current dynamics. They rule sua sponte, which kills judicial legitimacy. Joel Nelson 17. Sua sponte undermine our legal system. They lack due process. Neither has any opportunity to build their hard decision wayward court. Adjudicating process becomes sham participation, loss of meaning and perception, undermine every sort of system, loss of unraveling the rule of law. And extinction is 18. Adjudication interdeterminate theory of commercial peace that lead to states to calculate gains interdeterminate the last states to result their empirical studies of supports. This is international norms support rule of law authority generates compliance pull the courts also specific disputes reputational penalty shapes diplomatic context ruling offers a focal point of legal resolution signal of cooperation. Next up, the Roe DA. Justice Amy Coney Barrett should resign from the Supreme Court. Resignation restores legitimacy. Douglas 21. Barrett joined Thomas' nomination in violation of the court. Barrett resigning about bolster legitimacy. And Roberts will decide the case on legitimacy. Resignation is solved because it creates a 4-4 split. It would make all 5-4. Rule the following legal later for others. Roberts determining how far he is willing to go, overturning his control of the legal system, looking at legitimacy of court. And but Roberts could flip. This could make 19. Him as a measure of 3D chess anticipates all moves. Representatives in public government. Roberts set aside his article interest on behalf of representation of ACA. His revealed motivation. His core message remains the same, not political positions. The plan forces Roberts to backtrack McCready 16. It entails interventions in the markets and property measure, LNG, conservatives increasing in partisan positions, water pollution, challenging conservative faith in capitalism, and global war and 19. Politicization and access in the U.S. leads to conflict and choices that have a wide-reaching impacts on peace and influence, investing in health and reducing conflict, placing social service, highlighting to maintain stability, aid and reducing civilization, software like markets, Asia having a hallmark. U.S. is now in competition with Chinese influence and policies in that case, top power being security. Go to case. Framing. We access for framing through Charles' case and common applies proof to intentions of resolving structural violence. Their arguments don't assume the structure of debate where dropped arguments are presumed truth. Prefer specificity over internal links over generic index. Use consequences and existential threats outweigh plumber 15. Important to reduce your eliminating catastrophe, consequences, deontology, and ethics is all agree we should save worlds. That we should maximize good environment and particularly if having the people is important and not see how reducing accidents is the most important thing in the world. Case for reducing accidents is strong. Shrinking by the fact that existing people live high quality lives and non-consequential. View more that determines rightness and consequences, not that the latter doesn't matter. All doctrines take consequences into account. Rightness, deontology, ethics are concerned with promoting good and applying reasons to reduce extra risk. Moral uncertainty, those who disagree should have a significant confidence that their view is correct. Even if we are 100% sure well-being of people matters, is arguing reducing extra risk is the most important. Nuclear winter from a small exchange causes extinction. Footer 21. Thermonuclear bombs studies and use of nukes have resulted in nuclear winter. Storms release interesting climate effects, colder weather, and reduce sunlight were present a challenge to all life. The nuclear winter, including all the fraction and arsenals and parallel survival, is real danger of extinction. The destruction of life. Advantage 1. Solvency. One, they're just wrong. There's no trust justification under Winters, no sovereignty because the only rule in Winters' ground, no modern brain. Federal Circuit Court Appeals 15. Hopi points out Winters these provisions do not establish a fiduciary on their duty to establish adequate drinking water. They raise trust they go to here, and they just not establish any particular fiduciary duty. No duty. Reserve water gives the United States powers to exclude others and subsequently jeoparding water that fees reservation. It does not have give the United States responsibility quality of water than the reservation by holding or reserve water raised to trust. The Congress has a fiduciary's duty to exercise these rights and exclude others. Congress and the U.S. to be responsible arsenic for responsible for arsenic. We cannot infer that the United States has a fiduciary role. None of these later provisions use trust language that might invoke common law principles. The United States is not subject to common law duties. 2. No solvency. Water rights are not mentioned in the treaties. There's no substantial source of law creating a fiduciary duty. 1AC Crabble 19. To recover trust violation, there's a central source of law creating a federal duty, and water rights are not explicitly mentioned in treaties. Recovering for water-based source of violation is exceedingly difficult. 3. Their evidence says that Trump's obligation to journalistic and Supreme Court jurisprudence in front of racist. Preamble 19. Structural relationship to twice when Chalmers wrote they be domestic independent national in the state of village. The United States may often violate duties made the tribes and see a tribal racist, Indian law jurisprudence and racist anti-American Indian views are seeped into a tribal trusted relationship. 4. Doesn't solve Winters' doctrine only mentions a quantity of reserve water rights unless the land is open for public use. It excludes reservations all at liberty. Winters how to determine quality of water for tribal use doctrine, including reservation of rights, water sources, quantity of water reserved. Open to cross.
Okay, 3 minutes starting now. So first on this NS16 part on Vantage, exactly what all causes are there?
All causes, sorry, which answer are you pointing to?
Number 6 on Advantage.
Yeah, we didn't read number 6.
Okay.
Number 4, reserved.
Okay, then on this counterplan, the hope you don't want it, so why should we do it?
What do you mean, the hope you don't want it?
The hope you don't want it to go to through a constitutional convention and rather want it to go to the Supreme Court. So why should we believe your path? Like why should we do it?
All right, 1, we haven't established the hope you don't want it through specifically a con, and 2, it
Our evidence
establishes the
details
same.
that the hope you want it to go to the Supreme Court. It's written by the Hopi. So exactly
Okay,
what.
all right, sure, but it still establishes the same effect as the plan.
So you want to continue colonialism and discursive violence by not listening to the Hopi and by making sure
No,
that they get oppressed and marginalized for centuries to come again.
We want to help the Hopi in the best way.
Okay, so do you think that you know more about about the Hopi situation than themselves?
No, but we do believe.
So yeah, so then this kind of plan is
It
garbage.
doesn't matter if the Hopi want the Supreme Court. We still implement the plan. It's the same effects. We still solve clean drinking water. We solve the. It doesn't matter if they want the Supreme Court. It's just
So you're saying that their opinions don't matter. I got it. Then on this road side, what makes you think Justice Amy Coney Barrett will resign?
Sure. So basically, we read a piece of evidence. Oh shoot. All right. We'll read a piece of evidence in the 1NR, but
it's a uniqueness kind of plan.
Yeah, we fiat it.
You fiat that she'll resign.
Yeah.
Okay. Then on this state's counterplan, why do other states other than the state of Arizona need to get involved?
We didn't read the state's counterplan.
Okay. On this TUSFG, how do we not meet?
Basically, you don't meet the resolution because you're taking action on native or indigenous tribal lands instead of U.S. public lands.
So define a public land.
Huh?
Can you define a public land?
Define lands that are from the general public.
Like the land, federal land that the government owns, or all U.S. territory.
Well, it's the distinction isn't just between U.S. public lands and tribal lands. It's U.S. public lands, federal lands, all lands that aren't native lands, and then also
native lands. So you include natives.
No, we don't.
Okay, then define a public land. That's time. We'll take preps.
Land that's owned by the public.
Okay, but Starting now.
8 minutes of prep starting. Stop prep. I'll type the remaining prep in the chat and I'll send out the 2AC. Okay, I just sent the 2AC out. Tell me when you guys get it.
Give me a sec because my computer is like freezing up. Hold on.
So the order is gonna be the case in the order of the neg, and then for the off, it's gonna be T USFG, the Concon CP, the Congress CP, the plenary dissent, the sua sponte dissent, and the court legitimacy dissent. Is anyone not ready?
Can you give me that order one more time?
Yeah, okay. The off cases. So it's gonna be the case in the order of the neg, and then the off is gonna be the T USFG, the Concon counterplan, the Congress counterplan, the plenary decide, the sua sponte decide, and the court legitimacy decide. Okay.
Okay, cool. I'm good.
Okay. If everyone's ready, then my time will start. Yeah, I'll starting with the case. I was the first we are with us McClure first. Flores first 7K Hopi like that was appointing Hopi standpoint. Michael Flores says that weigh the impact based on what the Hopi actually wanted during multiple policy making because of perpetual colonial violence by imposing a set of those best logic. Some Hopi surviving framing is racist cause with the government use legitimate surviving framing to survive racism. Japanese permanent approved. And supporting worst case framing scenario test and worst case framing least racist bottom to low probability high impact scenarios which are inaccurate actually increases the risk. And first uses that there's no trust justification under winners, but one explicitly said that U.S. has the trust obligation to provide clean water. Secondly, using no sovereignty, but water rights are not mentioned in treaty. But your evidence never specifically mentioned the Hopi, so there should be crossover flow. European essentialists by generally tribes as one. Cross applied essentialists Paradise 6 and Mix 13. First, European essentialists because the generalized tribes is one group and has the same beliefs. So this is false because it reinforces colonialism and trapping indigenous people group, which is in the past which Du Bois 15 said that leads to Navajo manipulating indigenous sealed and killed the Hopi. And on the second, said you say statical solved, but no, it doesn't. And then one is you said that Trump gave $5 million and it has no improvement. Plus, the infrastructure project won't give funds specific to the Hopi. You have not one single word in evidence about how the bill will give funding specific to the Hopi because there's not one word specific to the Hopi. Again, you're being essentialist. And they said a federal government will ignore the Hopi's issue, but we said that we fear the court ruling and the court will force the UPA to provide clean water to the Hopi. And they said that TWA is solved, but no, none of your cards are single, especially Hopi. And again, Trump already gave $5 million, has no enhancement. Now onto the off case. First, on the TSFG, first we meet tribes are in the US. That's NCI 20. There are 55354 federally recognized nation in the United States. Second interpretation in the US means under federal jurisdiction. DOJ 20. Generally, U.S. crimes committed in any place within a jurisdiction of U.S. in an Indian country and several tribes meet. That's for CM1. Judicial martial rule that an Indian country cannot convene within a consent of federal government and tribes or domestic independent nation existing in a state full Indian nation to possess sovereignty the geographical boundary of the U.S. And third, kind of changes the limits and increase cases to include tribe. And fourth, education Michael Flores into the learning about tribe issues essentially to come as a call into Energy Law Journal. First, Energy Law Journal has no intent to find its author imagining whether Congress specific legislative rulemaking authority doesn't even contextualize this any specific word proof is not predictable. Second, about the BLM Indian does not EPA in water EPA is already on native and prove that they have jurisdiction of actually disprove their imagination. Now it's a Concon CP. First, permitted privilege double something leader invention is most ethical. Second, permitted CP scope is review evidently required and forces suffered. 7.8 resolved. That's PD 9. Result determined after reflections. We should discriminate.com. 10 should see Shaw intended to district later. Third, no sovereignty point course no evidence racist Supreme Court will follow constitutional amendment only we of the court and B's neg burden proved to be sovereignty not burdens dispute there's be so territory topic number really writing about it. And fourth, minor amendment to realize the constitution her sovereignty that currently one. With respect to the constitutional framework, peace operation policy, which during the world, frequent constitutional amendment can be undermined boundary between law policy to realize sensitive clutter diminish fundamentally. 56 constitution had nearly 6,000 amendments. Many are the product of pure interest of Sixth Amendment policy constitution and fifth CP legit disappointing no campaign sovereignty office and no card just with CP Hopi water rights and fair and educational because CP forces the absence of sovereignty of hypothetical idea and not in lace research. It's simply multi-active via that's utopian for all states to agree on the same tiny constitutional standard via add a race to bottom and delay dissenters until it and 6 core legitimacy here regular core externally must work within that's 99 considering a minimum alternative against authority supreme or high core enjoys the liberty uncommon else with legitimacy core to settle the society ideology charge disputes religion and such as they view this like supreme position man is illusionated think that members will eliminate user discretion and comes to amendments are written in general open-ended terms necessary for a hard question and summary resolution by the courts not to Congress CP. First, from do both prefer double sovereignty because of linear advantage and it's the most ethical and second no sovereignty. So point 8 I hope we know evidence Congress has jurisdiction over Hopi lands. B self-determination counterplan can change the one doctrine. Don't use the method Hopi tribe preferred. Subpoint C neg burdens prove CV sovereignty not app burdens to their CV so terrible utopia and nobody bothered writing about it. And third ground specified by the court of future court at Bowen in 1999. Representatives, cinema representative views the member only described the only collective opinion legislative a whole explanation and result from a commissioner source on equivalent judicial opinion because there is no legislative decisive binding future Congress by the voices rationals and procedures and third, CP links to benefit court involvement in implementation of CP that's permitted to subpoint a resolve PD resolve determined after election. Oh, okay. Now onto the plenary DA's consent card. First, personal specifically no evidence about native during docket second because your rights only PC don't apply to court to picture races can't have court. The Commission 14. Who will not have consult on PC only stated represent official denied essential medical treatment will not have harm religion in any way. Without share premise courts political scared of excuse the court failed problems because your duties in the court legitimately product 2 century not single or serious decision will undermine with 65% confidence before 60% after Supreme Court legitimacy not fragile credibility or understanding. Everyone's know they will be lose if court was trying to preserve credibility must calculate decision ultimately tarnish the court's legitimacy despite failing court retains high credibility. And third, it's too hard to predict the decision of the court. That's rated 14. Supreme Court issued complex diverse judges and unique involving ideology interpretation that have to provide polling data and the Ruger polled expert law professor Martin Ron insisted models and ideological things like instituting who parties are losses, legal rules president. Selection bias cases, Supreme law is usually vague in Supreme Court. Harder cases, merchant source 10%, 59%, and on to the sua sponte. Decide first. Via saw NATO part of the federal government normal means we via this they sue the government create test case. Second court can always find a case or will order new argument. That's 90. With the type that cases annually court can always find a case to raise any issue and the court have gone to length to find an issue and wants to know what a court cannot or the parties argued an issue the digital want to consider. And third, is my point is inevitable. It's all parts of law. That's in 12. Much more persuasive one of my first appear ability courts raise legal issues sua sponte and regardless of someone decision making inevitable and unavoidable seem neither feasible or desirable. And fourth, they are useful sponte unless it's harmless. It's listed 1. This is hard judiciary powers. Marbury has been established. It is proven that say the law rather than infringement. Sua sponte is an exercise the court's mandated function and not violation of the SOP when necessary. And fifth, no spillover against Gilson 3. Commitment or not a function of whether everyone pleases an influential decision of which cases loyalty is valuable because it's weekly related to action, not now to court legitimacy. This ad. First, specifically to the plan's best this year decides the second controversy and it doesn't impact legitimacy. That's May 15. So whether only 38% of the retail load have been opted lightning road controversy and it's 226 never been before. So many darts have been lobbying at right to marry, Affordable Care Act, Voting Rights Act, New Citizens United. These skepticism and legitimacy may be overthrown justice and maybe unanimous opinion fighters for the decision. Now, one justice agreed they're really split as a new ideological line. 66 cases decide only 5 along left-right fault line, and neither ideology nor partnership plays a considerable in rulings. And another big year is underway, and it just will soon take cases involving juvenile criminal justice, voting, public union, environment action, in religious liberty, abortion, no matter which these rulings do will evidence courts gone wrong. And third, steer decided to use racial domination of more 14. Steer decided with regard to race orchestrated state and genocide to have a person is defined legal framing based upon supremacy civil rights movement. Legal initiator emerged apart from President M. Brown was viewed from Supreme break and the stereotypes race non condos of voters appointing family scheme multiple votes being spread on 1 hour, which make debate unfair so that risk options being negative research of shall CP of rather than one extended block and research with conformance of conforming contradiction add-ons to CP can be linked in case linked to KWCB solvency fishing framing and this sets the CP ultimate impact with to plan into D. Our intuition is that Nick it's one kind of I'm ready for cross, I guess.
Sure. Can you send out a marked copy?
Yeah, sure.
Thanks.
I don't think the AF marked any cards. So
Okay.
unless someone disagrees, I don't think that they need to send a marked copy.
Okay. I still sent it.
Okay. All right. 2 minutes starting now. First off, theoretical reasons to reject the team.
Condo.
Just condo.
Yeah, I believe.
All right. So on the court politics decide, can you explain your second answer? Constitutional rights don't link, or like political capital doesn't apply to the courts.
Under the plenary decide or
the court's politics.
Wait, which office that? I don't think.
It's under the Congress CP. It's the court politics disadvantage.
Wait,
court legitimacy. Sorry.
the court legitimacy. Okay. Also, wait, you're talking about the second one?
Yes.
So we're saying that the controversy is inevitable, so like it's gonna happen no matter what. And we're saying that it doesn't impact legitimacy in general.
Is the court legitimacy answers to the plenary dissent, plenary powers
No,
dissent?
it's the court legitimacy dissent. It's like
I know, but which is the court legitimacy one answering the plenary powers dissent? Just to make
Oh,
sure.
they sent out a marked copy. They mismarked the cards. I mean the arguments. Yeah. Can you explain what stereogenesis is for your more 14 card, the third answer?
So if you look at the card, it says stare decisis with regard to race, etc., justified through legal frame based on supremacy, and then has that emerged departure from president has viewed the Supreme Court breaks in the end.
Thanks. I can read the card, but like, can you explain what stereogenesis is?
It's used to justify racial domination.
Okay, thank you. So how does that have anything to do with the court legitimacy, DA?
Do you want to answer this?
Yeah, so you're on the court legitimacy dissent.
Yes.
So your question is what again?
How does the third answer apply to the court legitimacy dissent?
Yeah, so we're just saying how like when you like use like claims about court legitimacy that is used to justify racial domination, since you basically think of different races as like you don't like acknowledge the past, I guess.
So how does this apply to the court legitimacy dissent? Like,
because you're dealing with the like sense like a right about like Native American, which deals with race.
okay, sure.
We're not taking any prep, sending out the document now.
You see no prep, right? Okay.
Sorry, I'm just trying to attach the file, but my Dropbox is like really messy, so I'm just like looking for it again. See, final send. Okay. The doc is sent. I'll give an order like once I set up. Okay. The order is going to be the Congress counterplan, the Con counterplan, then the plenary powers dissent, the framing, and then the case. Is everyone good? Okay. All right, cool. Object if y'all are not good, otherwise time will start my first one. The counterplan solves the F. Has Congress created statutory law that establishes that arsenic contamination is illegal on tribal lands? That's Douglas. Sufficiency. Solvency, a sliding scale. Risk of a net benefit outweighs any non-quantifiable deficits, and Judge Cook is a logical extension of conduct. The grounds arc doesn't matter because the counterplan would make it law, and it doesn't matter if the Hopi prefers the Winters doctrine. The counterplan still solves and avoid a dissent that outweighs, and the effects are the same. Resolved and should definitions don't matter at all, and the counterplan is not utopian, doesn't apply, and it's also reciprocal. Supreme Court ruling is just as utopian as the counterplan. Framing issue for all the deficits is that they link harder to the app. The 6th Court is definitely worse, more colonious, and less bad than Congress. And if they win their framing, you should vote negative because these are all linked to the plan. And do both links and net benefit that will be on the DISA, but it fails when the plan removes the restriction that the counterplan is interpreting and thereby renders any suit moot. CLS 17 and actual competition must exit as all straight to trial parties must continue, however, no taken outcome cases may become moot because of a change in law. And courts won't review moot cases, assumes waiver and forfeiture. Look 5 U.S. a constitution requires that there controversy in order for federal court subject matter jurisdiction whenever cases the moot that the court must dismiss the action regardless of whether the party's motion for dismissal. And look, Congress can fully fund, enforce, and support the Hopi tribe. They have full jurisdiction. In fact, the counterplan likely solves better than the per the case arguments and the plenary powers. That's Douglas and every plenary powers card. Here's another card, the Douglas 18, and the Congress expand its jurisdiction and the plenary power over all Indian affairs delineated to the Congress's power to expand tribal. The Congress should restore tribal sovereignty for crimes against all Indian victims in the Indian country. And firm to the counterplan is severance because you decided to specify SCOTUS in the plan, and it doesn't link to the benefit. It goes through Congress, not the court, which is irrelevant for judicial legitimacy of their plenary powers, has said. Asian counterplans are good. Our interpretation is that we get them against the spec the actor in the plan text. One, neg flex key to be small and offside bias areas magnified by link uniqueness and low baseline for substantial and education. Asian-based debates are the core of the literature proven by recent fights, and logic judges a decision maker and a resolution says USFG and key to test every part of the plan text. They need to justify their use of the USFG in terms and enact means and no impact uniqueness. Water protection is already absurdly broad and objectively good. It's just a question of the best way to implement it, which proves its key to Netflix, and no impact competition checks any foreign and reasonability. It's like reason to reject the argument not to team. The plenary powers is it. Plenary power solves terrorism, failed states, and isolationism. The counterplan can see the perm test of competition, not a reason to reject a team. The plenary powers is it. Plenary power solves terrorism, failed states, and isolationism, which are all existential threats Congress must be able to. The link alone turns the case current involvement and produces uncertainty and causes more tribal interference, and impact turns case isolationism and failed further structural violence and water quality problems. The political capital card is unresponsive, and winners win is also responsive. It's just like a completely different dissent. The link. Congress involvement in powers delegated to Congress triggers a judicial review broadly, which collapses congressional plenary powers. This also proves the app gets struck down, which means they don't solve no legitimate grounds for the ruling. The app wouldn't get held up in court and generates more confusion. Trigger 19, mixing doctrinal apples and oranges may generate more confusion in the point when they're the Montana than non-Indian activity may do. In parallel, the substance of the community exclusion power has been limited property, given the exclusion of power, finding the judgment on trouble that are arrested or circles to look outside the resolution. And Congress can override court rulings for the app and an equal 110 in the court declared the tribes like criminals or non-Indian tribal leaders started legislature office override the court in their door office enacted as an amendment in the ICRA. And that encroachment on the plenary power doctrine sets a precedent that challenges at a whole. Martin 15, the government has the power to reserve security against aggression and encouragement or render the necessity. Presiding the court belongs to Congress and foreign relations in the nation must be one place in some questions this linkage between immigration foreign and fierce decision making of foreign affairs delegating competent arrest upon information available to the executive and Congress when not the courts and foreign policy lies beyond the judge in the foreign area require trial and error with changes in time requires to the hearings of the litigation would interfere with flexibility judicial interference with the parallel ability to deriving from immigration trade according to single strategy and course of persistence of domestic action with the international area that are higher is the number affected the plenary power doctrine amendments the judgment that's in the work of the international system criticism of modify the construction and modify proposal look at immigration litigation makes the judicial likely to undervalue stability beyond their voters. And framing. Two frames. One, their evidence isn't about two competing policy proposals, instead about ignoring violence. Two, if we win Turn's case, it takes out framing because it proves they make things worse for they make things worse for people they're trying to help in the first place. And extend Clark, consequentialism and utilitarianism are good. Their framing reproduces violence and can't resolve broader threats because it makes it impossible to respond to disaster. That's Clark. It's the only egalitarian metric and maximizes collective benefit in an equal and distributed manner. And extinction outweighs it threatens billions of years and lives in future society. That's a prerequisite. Extinction precludes the possibility for improvement, which turns their framing society's self-improving means that the scope gradually solves the structural violence and sustaining life on Earth is an intrinsic good, and it's infinite, even at low probabilities because of irreversibility. And so floor for value lets everyone live to fight another day, which is necessary for agency, and death denies valid to life. The process of extinction itself causes billions of violent deaths, which is ethically indefensible and inverts the warrant for why their impact matters. And moral uncertainty, the risk we're right outweighs the risk we're wrong. Prioritizing extinction doesn't prioritize a certain group because everybody dies. It's Plummer. The case. Extend the rehighlighting from the 1 and C. They're wrong. There's no trust justification under Winters. There's no solvency because they would roll on Winters grounds. It's a rehighlighting of Federal Circuit Court of Appeal 15, and they dropped the rehighlighting of the Kreppel evidence that there's no solvency because water rights are not mentioned in treaties. So there's no source of law creating a fiduciary duty in there. Kreppel evidence also says the trust obligation is paternalistic, and the Supreme Court jurisprudence is racist. That turns the case, and it also doesn't solve because the Winter Doctrine only manages quantity of reserved water rights unless it's open for public use, which excludes reservations. That's law library in the status quo solves bipartisan infrastructure bill incorporates indigenous water quality needs AP 1223. The infrastructure bill permits the native and tribes like clean water through the largest infusion of money delivers money for water projects to the federal agency. Leaders say that funding is welcome. And there's all causes to native sovereignty, federal land control, and the federal government was just ignored the plan, and its 16 tenants by the authority began to purchase from the Antelico Dam and the dam could the little sea river from the change to reservoirs by laws of government written to tribal self-determination, trapping for self-determination. We coming up to government and corporation, the government trust was to protect our enhanced tribal assets, including natural hermit and cultural resources, village decision management action, the pipeline costs, and tribal resources. And then the court has zero ability to punish a violation of court orders of Shapiro 13. The federal judiciary is the weakest of the branches. The court has no temporal power in the subject. It is the government. There's always orders that have been ordered or avoided, such as the case in Hornbeck officer services versus Jewel instead of obeying the injunction. DOI ignored it without an effective contempt power to punish violation of the Supreme Court, would be unable to enforce its rulings. And the status quo solves. Tribal Water Infrastructure Act ensures tribal water infrastructure is a top priority. MSG 429, 250 million tribal water infrastructure will make it will make sure that tribes will be prioritized in chairman the appropriation of the committee, particularly important we help support tribal nations in providing reliable access to drinking water, boosting funding and support tribal nations' efforts to enact long-term solutions by ensuring stable and reliable federal investment. Mason, is there anything else you want me to read? 30 seconds. Okay. Yeah. Counterplan solves the case. It competes. The plenary dissent outweighs. Extinction outweighs. And like all the case stuff, status quo solves. There's all causes, and they can't solve. Yeah, I'll just end there. There's only like 10 seconds. I'm good for press.
Okay. Then 3 minutes starts now. First on your Congress counterplan, you said that Congress can fund, enforce, and support the Hopi. How do you have like a specific card that Congress is gonna support the Hopi that's specific to the Hopi?
Yeah.
You're
The
standing.
magical wand of fiat.
Huh?
The magic wand of fiat in my pocket says that we can fiat that the Congress will help the Hopi or do the plan.
Do you have like an evidence that they're gonna stand under a Hopi standpoint and give what they want?
Again, we fiat that. Like it's like the same. It's like reciprocal because like the Supreme Court, like you're fiating that they take this action. We're also fiating that, but we're fiating that Congress takes this action. Like I don't really understand like what
Okay.
this question is.
On your case, you said that the status quo solves. The infrastructure bill is gonna solve, but how do you know the infrastructure bill is gonna give like the money directly to the Hopi? Because you don't have like a single evidence that's
Infrastructure. The AP card says that infrastructure bill is promised. It will bring clean water to the Native American tribes through the largest single infusion of money. It delivers money from water projects through other federal agencies, which tribal leaders are welcoming right now.
how is like giving Native tribes like specific to the Hopi? How do you know it's gonna give to the Hopi? Because you only see Native tribes in your evidence.
Yeah, obviously Hopi is a Native tribe.
So like all Native tribes.
I mean, yeah, I guess, but it's just like clean water to all like indigenous people, which obviously includes the Hopi.
So you're guaranteed that their arsenic level, water will be solved.
I mean, yeah, I guess. I mean, yeah, that's the argument.
Okay. Can you explain why on your case that the all causes the native sovereignty?
Sure. The card is citing like how the federal government is just gonna ignore the plan. It cites that despite laws, the federal government has threatened tribal self-determination, and the government has a federal trust responsibility to protect or enhance tribal assets, but it like they don't like they wouldn't listen to this. They like
You mean they wouldn't listen to it?
like it's just saying that despite like laws that like will be passed or like
Mason, do you like know how to explain this? The NS card. Do you know how to explain this NS card? I mean, like, it's just saying that the federal government will just like ignore the plan because they have like plan control. I mean, like, it's not.
Yeah, that's tag. But like, what is it? Okay, it's okay. Actually, that's fine.
Sending out the doc right now. It's going to be the court legitimacy you just said. Can you turn your volume down? Adrian?
I got the one here.
All right. Does everyone else have it? Truth enough and Jet. Okay. I'll start now then.
Condo conditionality is good. Our interpretation is for condo. One, arbitrariness. The only argumentative limit is the resolution. The only basis for condo is it makes debate hard for the app. That's a slippery slope for no neg fiat, etc. Any constraint on negative arguments is unpredictable. Two, neg flex specificity and recency make the topic structurally app biased. Only condo can compensate for grounds loss in the mid explosion. Three, argument innovation and testing. Debaters are risk averse. The app discourages testing unique strategies outside of our comfort zone. Four, a 10-second 2AC doesn't justify its 5-minute 2AR. Five, excuse inevitable. Two, procedures one card TA stumble all offense. Six, the punishment should fit the crime. Infinite conduct is impossible because of one is the time constraints and goes with the counterplan. Their interpretation requires neg to be as prepared as the app, makes debate impossible and precludes testing. Core legitimacy disadvantage. Soft power outweighs anti-choice policy, destroys U.S. democratic credibility, reignites authoritarian revisionism and global militarization that culminates in nuclear wars that escalate and cause extinction. Drop the impact, which means it outweighs. It's also way faster than any other environmental scenarios that takes decades. It's eminent. I know the one is itching to spin the app as stare justices, but you should not fall for it. The 1AC mandates a massive expansion of the Supreme Court's jurisdiction over indigenous people and is perceived as a massive liberal ruling that's seen as critical race theory. Fox News and conservatives will point it out, which magnifies the link. Framing issue, Robert certainly believes in the link, which means that he'll look for an excuse to overturn Roe. The app gives them that opportunity. 2AC1, yes, specific link. Supreme Court said no a couple months ago. Flipping on the same issue it soon makes the court look like a liberal clown show and gives Roberts coverage a flip on Roe. Now News 47. Scotia's reinstated rule limiting the Native American input on water pollution. They rule the court has power to block the projects of polluted waterways. 2AC3 says doesn't overwhelm the link magnitude of the app. The plan involves Roberts and political ruling over water. It's blatant judicial overreach that exceeds institutional role of the courts. Hamilton 21. Majority rule decision of reverse concluding plans have sending to use PDT majority opinion premise on determination. Justice does not avoid court and controversial political issues, including water. A majority of mayors said we're not there before court, but ultimately conclude the case was non-justiciable political questions. Believe that they see institutional role in overseeing. Skip the next 4 cards. Go to uniqueness. Roe not demolished. LibTech says ACB will spin conservative, but we fiat Paris recuses due to her argument that the Catholics can't maintain impartiality. Oh shoot. I'll send out a card later, but that makes our Roberts a swing vote, which votes based on institutional legitimacy of the court. Leonhardt says he now favors a 15-week right to abortion, which protects 98% of procedures. It doesn't matter if other justices vote conservative because Roberts is a decisive vote. The spin that says other justices push Roberts to vote conservative, but they have no F. Roberts vote liberal. One is he's an institutionalist, deeply concerned about the court's legitimacy. That's Robertson. F is a liberal ruling that allows Roberts to move undercover. 2, empirics disprove he voted liberal in medical and recent Texas case. 3, the link is a neg uniqueness argument that Roberts will decide on the case on legitimacy. A recusal independently solves. Make of 4. Roe on the bring of following the legal validity for others. Roberts determines how far he is willing to go overturning to the legal system. Is required looking at the legitimacy of the court. The internal link. One is about perception. If the Supreme Court overrules long-held precedent, it'll destroy U.S. credibility because it's perceived as federal greenlighting of abusive policies. 2, modeling GFW 17. Prove U.S. policies and influence the decision globally and block access to reproductive rights. The women around the world are facing threats. The policy in the U.S. Actually, global communities, many of the key issues is domestic policy include access to health and the spotlight in the world. Leadership play a role in moving the needle or precipitating the rollback. 2, expanding reproductive freedom solves overpopulation, necessary and sufficient. 11. Research estimated the impact of family planning of this moment is providing safe contraceptive options that would lead to and reverse population growth. The effect is independent of any further reduction that occurs as a result of a woman's advancement. 3, even slowing growth is sufficient. Upon 17. A smaller number and warming, and nevertheless the process takes over pace. Governments have time to measure prevention. Extinction, Engelman 16. As numbers increase, reversibility changes are far-reaching ability to deal with economic and environmental problems required to zero growth. World peak as 8 billion emission savings population might be the policies aimed at reproductive freedom. If all pregnancies resulted from intended population would immediately shift towards decline within a few decades. When a woman achieves pregnancy intervals are lengthened and size shrinks and becomes less frequent, these slow growth. I'm gonna read a card that's on the doc. I'll send it out in a bit. Barrett's oath of office requires recusal to Sherry 21. And thus Barrett should recuse herself. Her only opinion is recuse. If she does not, she is violating her oath of office. I'll send that card out after. Go back to the link card, the second link card. Controlling water protection drains Robert's PC and steers politicized liberal policies. 20. Covenant joint level wings to reject interpretation of this. As the swing in environmental cases, it will be hard to find all rebuttal laws grounded on commerce, like protection of water, limiting commerce clauses, high priority for the Fed society. Mark the card at Fed society. I'll send out the card right now. I'm just gonna put it in the body of the chain.
Okay, I'll take prep starting now. Stop prep there at 3:40. Last YAF. The order is gonna be Hopi standpoint, essentialism, framing, case, Congress counterplan, planetary dissad, and then court legitimacy dissad. Anyone not ready?
I was away from the computer, so you're gonna need to say that again.
Yeah, so it's gonna be Hopi standpoint, essentialism, framing, case, Congress counterplan, planetary dissad, and then legitimacy, court legitimacy dissad. anyone not ready? Okay, then 5 minutes starting now. Even if you lose the entirety of the, even if you lose all the disads and case and whatever, you still win on first Hopi standpoint. They can drop this. You can drop this. You can cleanly extend it. The Hopi perspective matters since they've been marginalized for so long, and this flows af. First, their answers on TWA and ConCon, specifically their ConCon counterplan, how they like claim to solve for native issues without taking into consideration what the Hopi want. This marginalizes the Hopi perspective and allows colonialism to continue because you're not valuing their opinion on their own issue. Then two, again on the TWA and etc. They don't mention specific evidence highlighting that the Hopi's issues are solved, and they like claim that they're and they claim that the Hopi's issues have been like that they know better than the Hopi, which means that you should automatically check the team for like engaging this kind of anti-Hopi viewpoint. Then on essentialism, first again they drop it. We tell you that viewing all natives as one causes discourse violence, and this outweighs in on education. It matters more than the hypothetical disads or comments that they propose, since it affects our day-to-day lives. First, specifically on the Concord counterplan, they and the Conqueror's counterplan, they think that all native issues like fall under like the same treaty, and they read generic evidence about how native issues are like docket court legitimacy and all that nonsense. This means that it's like they generalize all natives as one, and that prevents them their voice. They silence them, or they silence the natives on the symbolic level. Then on framing, first again it flows aft. Callan 73 says extend Callan 73. Callan 73 says survival framing justifies racism, i.e. Japanese internment camps in Cold War II or are projected to prove. Then Shiner 10 also says that worst thing is wrong because it leads to the race to the bottom to high impact, low probability scenarios, which are actually inaccurate and increase risk. To the section always no, they don't respond to a racism claim of how it justifies racism and structural violence. And again, it doesn't because they don't solve. It leads to like worst case thinking and leads to race to the bottom. Then they say useful good. First, First, the low probability impacts are not solving for anything. It's hypothetical. 2, value in on education. And 3, these groups have been marginalized for so long. We must listen to them now. There's no way like a disad is like. There's no way like people get like affected by the Supreme Court ruling in favor of the Hopi. Then on case first, we tell you that Hopi has 7K or 7K with arsenic laced water. They say there's no justification. Yes, there is. We tell you that like in the status quo there's no duty, but we're changing that under the case. They say it's racist. No, it's not. Confirming that history. Then they say TWA first. No evidence about Hopi. Second of all, it's can't solve for the Hopi wanted to go through the Supreme Court for a precedent-lasting case. On Congress first, they have no solvency jurisdiction over. Congress doesn't have jurisdiction over Hopi lands. Rather, treaties do. That's not Congress. That's rather the Supreme Court doing it. They respond to this and they extend the permit to both. It's not moot. Congress doesn't have jurisdiction. And second, even if they do, it's different. It's different from Winters. And third, people will always challenge it. Then on planetary disad, first they say it's a constitutional right, like water, access to clean water. There's no way that angers any key members. Then they say they said it affects like it affects, but first the native case is a small issue, like in stark comparison to other important issues like Roe v. Wade already decks the disad. Then 3, Congress has no jurisdiction over interpreting Winter's doctrine during any treaties made. It's the job of the Supreme Court. Then on the court legitimacy side, first May 15 says the controversies are inevitable. There are always controversies, i.e. Roe v. Wade proves. Then they don't have any evidence specific to Hopi. They read generic water language, which is bad on essentialism, Hopi standpoint, and framing as an underview. You vote AF for creating a lasting precedent case that Hopi can always refer back to their ConCon counterplan, their ConCon counterplan or the disads, even if they might outweigh it in their framing world, which flows AF. It doesn't create a lasting precedent case and allow structural violence to continue in the back doors. Vote AF. They drop framing. It's clean up ballot for in-on education. Yeah, that's time.
8 minutes. right, this time. Set up and then give an order. Okay, so it's going to be the it'll be the Congress counterplan, the politics dissad, core politics dissad. Or actually the framing stuff first and then Congress counterplan, court politics. Is everyone good? All right. And Mason is that. Okay. Did you send it? Okay. All right. I'm stressing my first word, objective. There's issues. They say we are essentialists, but there's no link. We're not essentialism. Reading generic cards doesn't necessarily say that all tribes are the same, just that tribes are part of a larger inclusive label, which is definitely not what they have criticized. They have not said tribes is a dirty word, just that they have more specific evidence, which is an evidentiary standard, not a reason to reject the team. They dropped that we win turns case. It completely takes out framing because it proves they make things worse for the people that they are trying to help. Extend consequentialism and utilitarianism. It's good. Their framing reproduces violence and can solve broader threats because it makes it impossible to respond to disasters. It maximizes the collective benefit in an equal and distributive manner. That's Clark. And extinction outweighs, they shouldn't have brushed this off. It threatens billions of present lives in the future society. Extinction precludes this possibility for improvement, which turns their framing. The status quo gradually solves the structural violence, and sustaining life is an intrinsic good. They dropped that the process would cause billions of violent deaths, which is ethically indefensible, and that prioritizing extinction doesn't prioritize a certain group because everybody will die. That outweighs, and the Congress counterpart. At the top, massive risk of a dissat and 100% counterplan solvency is an auto-neg ballot. You should not let the two-error frame this debate as we're racist versus a dissat and the counterplan. Voting negative does not say that Hopi should not have access to water nor essentialize them. It just says that the app going through the court is the wrong solution and the dissat outweighs. Currently, SCOTUS will, or actually the Congress counterplan first. The Congress counterplan solves 100% of the act by having Congress establishing it as a law that arsenic contamination is illegal on tribal lands. Congress can fully fund, enforce, and support the Hopi. They also have complete jurisdiction over the Hopi. Drop that the counterplan solves better due to all of our case arguments. The Douglas card and the plenary's power dissad cards all support the solvency. Extend the other Douglas card from the 2NC, that plenary power over all Indian affairs, allow congressional power to expand, retract, and control tribal authority. Congress will restore tribal sovereignty and expand jurisdiction. And extend the framing issue. They link harder to their own act because the 6-3 court is worse, more colonialist, and less bad than Congress. If they win framework, you vote negative, these all link to the plan. The dissad. Okay, the dissad. Currently, SCOTUS will not reverse Roe versus Wade because of Roberts' concern over court legitimacy. However, the act provides political cover for Roberts to overturn Roe without undermining court legitimacy. Soft power outweighs, anti-choice policy destroys U.S. democratic credibility, greenlights authoritarian revisionism, and global militarization that culminates in nuclear war that escalate and cause extinction. They drop the impact, which means it outweighs. We win framing, that's 1NC, and the link work. We have a link specific to water pollution's influence on tribes. SCOTUS says no. For them to flip-flop on it makes the court look like a liberal clown show. Their only answer was a controversy inevitable answer, but we answer this, it doesn't assume the link magnitude. The act provides a liberal ruling that Roberts can use to move undercover. Plus, all the thumpers are priced into our uniqueness evidence, which is from a week ago. Only the app triggers the link. Our link isn't just about controversy generally, but water controversy with natives. The internal link alone outweighs. Okay. If SCOTUS overrules held precedent, U.S. credibility is destroyed. It's perceived as a federal green light. It's perceived as a green light for abusive policies. U.S. policies directly influence global decisions. The U.S. stance on human rights is critical because countries around the world will model them. Women are facing threats to fundamental rights. That's GFW 17. Is there anything else you want me to say? Okay. So Bottom line, the counterplan solves 100% of the F, which means the framework doesn't even matter. The dissat outweighs because the counterplan solves 100%. The two-area doesn't get any new answers. And they said like all the stuff about how we're essentialists, there's no link to that. They basically just kind of dropped, they basically just brushed off our like framework. Consequentialism and utilitarianism is what you should use to evaluate the debate. Extinction outweighs it, like, and they've dropped like our turns case analysis that they link back to their own framework. Congress counterplan solves everything, so framework doesn't even matter. The dissat outweighs, and we win that extinction outweighs, and we're not essentialist. Vote negative.
Okay, we will take the rest of our prep starting now. Okay, that's time. The order is gonna be the case, including the framing, and then it's gonna be the Congress counterplan and the court politics dissent. Is anyone not ready? Okay. If everyone's ready, then my time will start. Yeah. First, we win this debate because we win a Hopi standpoint, and then marginalizing the Hopi causes discursive violence and impedes debate and meets them on a symbolic level. McCullough states that the next action is Eurocentric and through by the settled mind rather than Hopi's outweigh on education since language shapes reality and through shapes reality discourse. State reality and labels are bad. They put a label on the Hopi as only native, connecting them to other native tribes. This is what allows us discursive violence to continue and drop all the new to an our answer on essential and skews to air and skirts af and such always on education and around senses course and debate reality and thought. So we win case in the entire way because we solve for the Hopi issue while they don't, because they are essentially they completely drop our essential argument throughout the entire debate. They only bring out answer and the to an which is too late. Therefore they couldn't solve any of it because they're generalizing tribes as one single thing. Hopi will continue to suffer under their counterplan. This is a voting issue because when you're essentially you're promoting this that mindset and you cannot solve the Hopi's arsenic issue. So therefore only under our court ruling can solve for the Hopi, and we stand under the Hopi standpoint, which they also drop. In extent, Du Bois 15 card Navajo is a different tribe. They have a different issue. This shows how there's no way that you'll be able to solve because throughout the entire debate, your case Andrew has not one card that is specific still to the Hopi, which no matter. So you won't be able to solve for the arsenic issue that which is and happening in SAS. Cool. And extender worst case framing all their impacts go out the window because our worst case framing argument talks about how worst case framing only leads to inaccurate scenarios and also increases the probability of happening. So it's bad. And we outweigh this McCullough Ferris nice point A Hopi standpoint weigh the impact based on what the Hopi one drinking will talk about policy making bigger perpetuate colonial bonds and posting a set of those knows best logic. They dropped this argument so she shows how we should weigh the impact of what the Hopi want, and survivor framing is basic. Columns 3 said government survivor framing just by racism and Japanese and proof and some points. Worst case framing, and worst case framing leads to race at the bottom to probably high impact scenarios, which are accurate actually increases the risk. They also dropped this framing argument, and they said that the status quo is solving, and they feared that, but. Judge, we should focus on real world change instead of what could possibly happen. They're shaping reality through colonialism, and it's not good for change. And on now on the Congress CP first, they said that a massive and they said that going through the court is bad, but going through the court is the only way to get what the Hopi actually want because they're the one who sued the court, not the Congress. And a Purdue Congress don't have jurisdiction, and people will always challenge it. It's a constitutional right, and native case is such a small issue which takes this side. Okay, and now to court politics this side. They said that it will cause extinction escalation, but again in our framing argument we said that worst case framing only leads to inaccurate and it'll actually increases the risk of happening. So and it causes race to the bottom, and also all impact goes out the window, and they never answer our argument, our framing argument that. And they said that water pollution are specific on the tribes. It's on the tribe, but it's not specific to the Hopi. You're being essentially, but generally using the tribes as one, as that like they have the same issue, which is false because Hopi like our debate card says that Navajo has like complete different issue than the Hopi. So you link this is why you link, because you're essentialist, you're using tribe as one single thing, and they cannot win on DA since it's not specific to Hopi. It's not even in the Hopi standpoint, and they drop the Hopi standpoint, so they can't solve the case because they don't even know what the Hopi want. And on the courts they said there's always going to be controversy and they have no specific evidence to Hopi and vote a president case and that they do not have a president case. So so we win on case because they're essentialists and they don't win a Hopi standpoint. Thank you.
Good debate.
Good debate.
Good debate.
We're all in.
My partner's in the restroom, so.
No worries.
Karen, you there?
All right. Congratulations to everyone on making it to the finals. This is super, super impressive. You all are excellent debaters, and based on how amazing this debate was and how amazing all of the other debates that I got to judge all of you all, for the rest of this weekend. And like, man, you all have great things ahead if you stick with it. So I encourage you to do that. You're going to be amazing. And you should be really, really proud that you made it this far. The decision is a 3-0 for the neg from Modern Brain. Congratulations. And congratulations to the AF, also on an excellent debate. Also, round of applause. Good job. I can go first. So I thought that the counterplan solved all of the case. I did not think that the jurisdiction solvency deficit that the AF was going for ended up being true. I read through the evidence, and the neg had very, very good evidence that described how incredibly broad congressional authority over tribes is. The term for this is plenary, which is a phrase that literally basically means it's unlimited. It's like categorical authority over the entire area. And all of the neg evidence uses this very, very sweeping language to say that, like, even though there are other sources of law in this area, so like, for example, you're pointing to treaties that say, like, there's also obligations that stem from treaties. Congress kind of has the final say about how to manage relations with tribes as a matter of legal fact. And so I don't really think that this jurisdiction argument that you all are focusing in on for these last rebuttals is kind of the way to go and ends up getting you anywhere. I think you have this other argument, which you're mostly making on the case and like on the framing page, which has to do with, well, the Hopi have asked, or the Hopi want the Supreme Court mechanism as opposed to the congressional mechanism. And this is kind of the other solvency angle that you have. My problem with this is you have evidence that says that they have attempted to pursue litigation in the courts. What you do not have is cards that say the important part is the particular channel through which the right is kind of secured, or through which the outcome is secured. And the neg is, I think, very persuasively explaining that, like, as long as the important part is preserved, like the thing that the Hopi actually want in their litigation is, the outcome of reducing arsenic content in water. And, you're spinning your card pretty well, but like your card, I don't think is nearly as explicit as what you're describing. Your card is just kind of saying that, like, the Hopi are pursuing this particular strategy at the moment, but that does not mean that, it does not support the argument that I think you want it to be making, which is that the Hopi would therefore be unhappy if they won the same victory through a different legal channel. And so given that I think the counterplan solves 100%, I don't think that the risk of the dissent needs to be very large. And you're doing a good job explaining why controversies are happening now, and there's lots and lots of logical problems with disadvantages like this. I think a better approach would have been to focus kind of on just a current events type of thing. Like, we already basically know what the Roe v. Wade decision is going to be. So I don't think the whole, at a foundational level, I don't think the premise of this dissent makes any sense, because we kind of already know what the court is going to do. And it's pretty much too late probably for any of the vote switching and horse trading and balancing that the neg evidence is describing to happen. But that having been said, I think the neg has some evidence that says that Roberts makes decisions based on balancing legitimacy. They have evidence that says that rulings in favor of tribal rights that are extremely expansive and liberal kind of allow Roberts to counterbalance by making a conservative ruling, or at least he thinks in those terms. He thinks that it provides him the political cover to do that. And you've conceded the impact, which kind of operates at both an extinction level that you've criticized. But even if I was not to care about worst case scenario planning, overturning Roe v. Wade would be really, really bad, and it would hurt lots of people, which is something that the neg also threw out there as kind of a throwaway line. Definitely not an emphasis of I think the 1NR didn't say it at all, but the 2NR did have a throwaway line to that effect. The last thing is the framing business. And I thought about this for a little bit. I kind of end up agreeing with the neg's no link argument, basically. So the way that you're trying to go for this, you're accusing them of being essentialist, and I really think for me you just need to go into a little bit more detail about what exactly it is that they're saying that you think links to the way that your 1NC evidence characterizes the problems with essentialism. Because I kind of agree with the neg's description of what they're saying, which is obviously they're not saying that all tribes are the same. They're obviously acknowledging the fact that there are many, many differences between tribes, and the Hopi have many unique interests. But the types of claims that they are sweeping the Hopi into a broader category, it's just accurate. So for example, one of the claims that they're making is they made this 1NC argument that says there was a bill that was passed that gave a lump sum of money to legal entities designated as tribes, of which the Hopi is one. And you're well, the Hopi have different interests. And I'm yeah, sure, they have different interests, but as a matter of legal fact, they are one of many legal entities that are designated as a tribe. I don't think it's essentialist to say that. It's just descriptively correct, or another example, the neg did not read specific link evidence about the Hopi on the legitimacy disad was another argument that you made. But it's the link argument to the legitimacy disad is that it would be perceived as a liberal ruling to expand tribal rights. And it's yeah, the Hopi are unique, but it does not mean that it's essentialist to say that judicial rulings expanding tribal rights are perceived as liberal regardless of which tribe is the beneficiary. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's I get where you're coming from, and this is potentially a smart pivot, because I think after the block, you're behind on a lot of parts in the debate. So it's smart to look for ways out like this and to refocus the debate onto terms that are more favorable to you. But if you want to do that more effectively, you should really focus on pulling out lines and specific quotes from their speech to be here's a sentence that they said where they lumped in the Hopi with a bunch of other people. It was not accurate, or it was masking a particular difference in interests. Stuff like that. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I'll stop talking and let the others go.
Jed, you want to go? You want me to go? Yeah, I also thought this was a great debate. Hopefully all of you all are going to continue in high school, so we can watch you all on elims of the TOC whenever you all get there. Because yeah, you all are fantastic. I've judged both of you at this tournament, thought you were very good. I judged, I think, maybe both of you in the season 2 and thought you all improved drastically. So it's a pleasure to judge this debate. I don't differ substantively too much with Truth. Thought counterplan zapped 100% of the case. Thought there was a relatively big risk to the DA. So I have I guess some broad comments to just add to what Truth said. I don't think the approach that the AF is taking is necessarily the easiest to win versus a policy-esque strategy. But if you're going to deploy it, and on top the drawing from lines thing, I think you need to make references to more persuasive parts of the things you're going to case. So the 1NC was natives aren't part of the USFG. Maybe something you can throw in is a K of, I don't know how good, you said, natives aren't part of the United States. Maybe that's Kable. But I think you need to answer DAs on a more substantive level and K that part. So you have cards that are preserving stare decisis is racist. And that argument's fine. Just we shouldn't care about court legitimacy if the court is bad or whatever. Or they've defended expansive American foreign policy against native interests, right? They read a DA that was we shouldn't do the plan because we need to secure war powers abroad. That seems a lot more capable than this you homogenized tribes thing, right? Because then you could read impact turns that are you're right, the plan like maybe not just impact turn the DA, but like be like, yeah, it would not be that bad if we constrained American war powers because the US is an imperial power. That's like in line with your impact turn arguments. And instead of going for like a discursive like rhetoric, I think you should just impact turn the substance of what they're saying, if that makes sense. But yeah, and I also thought like your framing arguments could have been a bit more specific. Like you have this like Callahan 73 card or something. Just like read a bit more like Mitchell. Like and if like you can email me after and I can like totally send them. I'm sure like these other two judges have them too, but just like more specific framing cards could have benefited. For the neg, I wanted to get this on my chest. What like stop talking about antitrust. That was a little weird. Not a big deal, but it was strange. Like I thought you could have been better at Turn's case. Like you read a whole DA about Roe, which again, a little weird in the first place, but now that you're winning it, like talk about like why, at least for a little bit, just like the reason why Roe is important is not because it stalls war. Like if you won your DA, like that is a devastating Turn's case argument for the AF. That seems very, very pertinent. I thought you could have added like some essentialism answers, like they link, because they were like, all hope you would say no to the counter plan, which like they clearly don't have evidence for. Maybe say like I believe the term is strategic essentialism is good. So like obviously tribes have different interests, but like they are generally all unified against, you know, arsenic poisoning. So like maybe in this case, like essentialism is not as bad as, because it's like you're not saying but all tribes are the same. You're saying all tribes don't like this thing, which like is probably true. And then also say like maybe the reason they want the court to do it is because litigation is more accessible. So it doesn't matter if they don't want the counterplan. They think the counterplan is like too utopian because like they can't get Congress to do what they want, but like maybe they can litigate. But yeah, but I thought the 2NR choice was like pretty good. Other than I thought you should have gone for plenary power stuff, but I thought just like spending some time at the top being like, look, like this like discursive K thing, like we don't link to it. It's not that big of a deal. But yeah, those are just like mostly, all these comments are mostly cosmetic, but I thought the debate was excellent.
Yeah, I agree with everyone who's gone before me. I think you all are extremely talented. Hope to see you in the future. My decision doesn't differ really any substance-wise, but the one comment I did want to add is I think some of this framing stuff could be like cleaned up in the 1AC, potentially just like kind of packaging it together instead of having like this Hopi framing and like dishead framing. Because I get what you're trying to do, but it just becomes kind of confusing to flow and organize as the debate moves on. But as you're going to the 1A or 2A, I think like if you're going to make this large framing push, like kind of as Jimin said, I think you need to tie it to like at least some defensive argument on these disads. And so I think Jimin kind of alluded to this, that if for like the legitimacy stuff, you should say like legitimacy like doesn't matter. Like if the court is a anti-indigenous, you know, the AF is kind of the only way to solve that. Or you can kind of go the opposite way in terms of saying like maybe like the plan restores legitimacy, but just some way to kind of package the framing stuff with like a defensive argument or some like offensive argument on these disads, because kind of just as it is, it's like this floating framing page that I'm not really sure like how it necessarily interacts with the disads or arguments outside of just like the impact level and the fact that they've said extinction. And so just giving like some place to kind of plant that framing and make it more of like an offensive argument rather than like a defensive argument to get rid of their impacts. I think that could be really helpful. But I think we're all happy to answer any questions. If you'll have any.
How's the 1AR?
Yeah, I think the 1AR is kind of where you like first bit into like that we're going all in on this framing stuff. I think that's where you should have at least extended like some of the defensive cards that were read in the 2AC. Just kind of give the 2AR to give the 2AR different tools to give a different 2AR if they needed to. And so the way the 1AR went, I think you kind of pigeonholed yourself into doing like the one thing you needed to do, that you were going to do, which, you know, that was what the 2AR was. One other comment I had, I think like Kondo could have been in the 1AR, just put a little more pressure on the 2NR. But yeah, I don't know if Jimin and Truth have anything to add.
I would say, or Truth, do you want to go?
Go ahead.
Okay, I was gonna say maybe just faster and more efficient on the case. Like I like you're persuasive, but just like the 1AR is just inevitably time pressed because of the block. And then I think actually that's one of the places where you could have linked them to your K-ish business. Like they said Squo solves, and you should just be like against an AF that says like Native people are suffering from violence, saying Squo solves is like violent, because like I don't know, like maybe I don't know the exact way to phrase it since this is not really my wheelhouse, but like yeah, they're basically just saying like I don't know, maybe that they're lying or like that they're like gaslighting indigenous people who are demanding the end to this thing, like because they've read cards that are like, why would we ever do the plan? Like Biden is doing great things for native tribes, and that is a potential point of offense. But other than that, I didn't think the 1 AR. I thought the 1 AR was a good speech. Nothing like too big of a deal, and a deficit to the counter plan would have just really helped this overall strategy.
Okay, thank you.
Corey Lane, do you have any more questions, or can I ask one?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. You said you were talking about establishing the court legitimacy disadvantage as like a turns case. How could we have like properly done that?
At least what I was talking about was like, instead of being like nuclear war is violent, extinction would kill everyone, talk about your, like, the higher up your turns case argument on the internal link chain is, the likely the better it is. So like maybe like if the court is illegitimate, it's the plan is unenforceable. But I think the better one is just like, if Roe got overturned, or like IRL when it gets overturned, but in this debate, when Roe gets overturned, it would have some pretty bad effects for a lot of people in the US. And that's so much more persuasive than be like, that gets modeled elsewhere, somehow solves nuke war. Like it just, and like it makes it so that your framing arguments don't even have to be in the 2NR. Like I mean, you should always extend framing if you have time. Like you don't need to win like consequentials and util if you're just like, we have a counterplan that solves the case. And like this Roe thing is a huge deal. Like, I don't know how you would go about the specifics, but like talk about why Roe is good outside of like modeled war stuff. Like Roe is good. Not to like liberally brainwash everyone here, but
would we have to like establish that like the effects of like Roe being overturned are worse than like the effects on the Hopi tribe?
You should just say like, it's not like we have no cards that speak to like what the Hopi care about more. Like that would be, I guess, the gold standard. But the goal of doing this is to make it so you have an impact argument that works on the level of the framing that they are trying to advance, right? And the framing they're trying to advance is just like, the judge should assume the standpoint of the Hopi, and the judge should just vote for whatever the Hopi want, right? And so the goal of doing this is to basically complicate that and be like, either way, like the things that you're trading off are both things that the Hopi want, right? There's no option here where you can just vote for what the Hopi want, right? Because it's really, really damaging to, people in the Hopi tribe if Roe gets overturned. But it's also really damaging to the people in the Hopi tribe if there is arsenic poisoning, right? Which is a really, really difficult trade-off, and one that their framework doesn't allow you to make. So therefore, you should look at the broader impact calc, right? Which is what you're wanting us to do anyway. But luckily, Judge, you don't even have to make that trade-off because we have this counter plan to solve the arsenic poisoning without giving up the abortion access. Does that kind of make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
I actually have a question. So how can the 2AR win given the 1AR choices in this debate?
I don't think after the 1AR I was gonna decide that there was a solvency deficit. I can't really see a 2AR. Maybe I'm missing something, but I can't really see a 2AR that would have convinced me that there's a meaningful solvency deficit to this counter plan. So honestly, we were talking about like 1AR choices, so maybe this even goes back to there. But like, I was kind of thinking like maybe it would have made more sense to just like go lean even harder into this pivot that you're making and just give a 1AR that is like, whatever, screw the disad, screw the counter plan. Like, we're not going to win a solvency deficit to the counter plan. It doesn't really matter. We're just going to go for the critique of their essentialist representations. We're going to do it for like half the speech. It's going to have a lot of detail. It's going to have a lot of lines that we're pulling out. And then the rest of the speech is conditionality. Like that might have been better for the 1AR, but like your question was about the 2AR. And so obviously hindsight is 2020, but like you didn't convince any of us that there was a solvency deficit to the counter it feels bad to give up on stuff like this and go for what feels like a Hail Mary, but you know, it's like if it's a losing battle, it's a losing battle. There's not really a point in fighting it. And so you got to look at what are your other options. And the other option that you've given yourself here is going for this critique. And so yeah, that's probably my answer, is just like reallocate much more time to that. Even if it's a little bit late developing, you know, spend a little bit of 2AR time being like, look, I know the 1AR, you know, this might seem late breaking to you. Here's why that's okay. Like, we're impact turning these really, really new sentences that they're saying, and they keep giving us more and more links, which is why this is a bigger and bigger deal as the debate goes on. So you can't just be like, it's all new, reject it. It's totally fine that we're saying it new because they keep giving us new links and it's like so egregious and so bad. And here's all these links, and you like, how can you possibly vote for them? I feel like that would be a reasonable 2AR move in this situation.
Thank you.
I think you could have added, like, this is one quick thing. And again, if you don't have this, you can email me after the debate and I can send it to you. Like, overpopulation impact scenarios. Like, there's a lot of people who are like, they're super racist and colonial. Because like, think about what their DA says is like under like developing countries like are just like becoming overpopulated like messes, and like of course they need Western reproductive like modeling, you know. So like that's another example of what I was talking about earlier. That instead of saying like Kang like maybe just their essentialist lines, which I didn't think was the most strategic in this debate, Kang the things that they have like defend in their DAs, right? This OPOP thing, like if you were just like, we're jettisoning substance, right? We're going for this K. Within this debate, it's about rhetoric or whatever. Here is violent rhetoric, like OPOP, like core legitimacy, you know. And I think that could have been a pretty interesting 2AR to watch. But like I said, like hindsight is like Drew said, hindsight is 2020. So like obviously not your fault. I thought given like your app, it's just hard to answer the Congress counter plan. So it's like I didn't think it was your fault. Which is kind of the way the debate played out.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Cool. Fantastic
you.
tournament, everyone.
Yeah,
Good work, everyone.
Good job, great work.
Thank you for judging.
You were judging.